What's doing? You're hanging with the Niners nut on this very pleasant Wednesday afternoon, and we are on the eve of the 2022 NFL Draft, which is building to be a very well, looks like it's going to be a very interesting draft. Just recently, early this week, I was watching, since I'm here on the East Coast, I was watching the potential New York Jet draft picks, and it looks pretty interesting. I think there's a really large amount of talented players that are going to be coming out of this draft that hopefully can have a large impact on the game itself. Of course, sometimes you see that, you either have a draft that's filled with nameable talent that's built up and hopefully it lives up to it. And then you have drafts, I think, a little bit such as this year that may look like it's lacking in certain positions, but turns out that a lot of those guys go on to be studs and stars, man. And I think it's going to be interesting either way. You could never. The draft is never a definite thing. I don't care. Mel Kiper, all these experts, so-called experts, think they have it all kind of down to a science, but that's a lot of bullshit because no one does. If that was the case, how many of how many things would they be right about? How many things would they be wrong about? I mean, going back as old as time with the draft, there's been those guys that have predicted this one will do this, still this one will do that. We know that's not always the case, so no one really ever knows. I think that a lot of these scouts, they intend well, and it's not always their fault because they're there and they follow certain players, and like I said, sometimes certain players just don't live up to the whatever happens, man. And it's just kind of the way it is, but what can you do? So just looking over some of the polls, I had put some polls together on the Niner Nut page on Instagram. One of them, the most recent ones, obviously, were, if you're looking, greatest tight end in 49er history. And the other one was you had to choose between a 49er backup. The picks were Elvis Grbac, Nick Mullens, Shaun Hill, and Steve Bono. I was surprised by a lot of these, by a lot of the numbers thus far. It's still going on. The polls are still going on. I think what kind of intrigued me most was the fact that a lot of people had picked that they wanted to go with Nick Mullens as one of the players named there, which I found to be very interesting. Nothing against Nick Mullens or anything like that. I think Nick Mullens was a solid backup. Had wished more for him, especially when he left San Francisco. But I think he, again, a solid backup amongst, in that poll, some very other good 49er backups. Steve Bono, Elvis Grbac, and Shaun Hill. It's funny. I had picked the four of them because I felt that they were four players, I think, that for the most part excuse me, you'd say back-to-back words like that, had positive results. I mean, if you look at Shaun Hill's time as a 49er, Nick Mullens, Steve Bono, and Elvis Grbac, you'll see that they for the most part had some good positivity when they filled in as starters. Nick Mullens, especially in his first season when he filled in as a starter, I thought that there was going to be some competition there for the future when he filled in, because I thought that he had 2 years ago, I believe I thought that he had really earned his keep, had done well. I liked what I saw at him. I thought there was always room for growth with him, but I liked the fact that he was a bit of a gunslinger. I'm just going to bring up some of Nick Mullens' stats. I always like to have the stats in front of me because I'm a stat guy. And just, for reference, I think it's always important just to know, what we're talking about. I there was something about him I liked. He went to obviously he went to Southern Miss. He broke Brett Favre's records there. And just looking over at his time as a 49er, I mean, yeah, 2018 he had a pretty decent year. 13 TDs, 10 interceptions, over 2,200 yards. He was sacked 17 times. He only played he appeared in 8 games, started games, had a 3-5 record. I can't put that all on him, of course, because it's again, it's not always the fault of the player. That in 2018, they were still coming of age as well. And then, of course, in 2019, he didn't see any time when Jimmy had his best year. And then last season, he filled in 2-6, didn't have the best of years. Still threw for over 2,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. But I think that if you were watching him carefully 2 years ago, he was a little shaky, and he got the injury with the broken bone in the elbow and whatnot. But I thought Mullens was pretty solid for the most part. I was surprised to see that he was the pick on that poll that everybody wanted as everybody picked as the backup. Of course, everybody's always entitled to their opinion, and I totally understand. Um, I actually I can understand why you would pick him, but out of that group, maybe they're not familiar with certain other guys there. Going over to Shaun Hill, his time as a backup, he was a guy. I think. I can't think. I mean, look at his record as a 49er starter: 2-0, 5-3, and 3-3. He was 10-6. He had some decent years there. 62.8%, threw for over 2,000 yards twice, 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 16-12. I think he was limited in his arm, but I really liked where he was. He was very cerebral with the ball. He didn't kill us. He didn't really hurt us as a quarterback. I mean, for his career, obviously, he had limited time that he played. He only played in 49 games in 7, 10, 11 years. And he started 35 and a 17-18 record, but he enjoyed his best time with the 49ers, 2-0, 5-3, 3-3. I think he filled in rather admirably. And obviously, I think that they were looking for a bigger name. They wanted to move on from him. But I really liked him. I thought he was a very solid player as a backup. 6'3", 230. Kind of had again, not a great arm, but for the most part, he was very durable. He didn't play on the best of 49er teams, but I liked him. I think he was solid. I think he was one of the more solid 49er backups throughout the 49ers history. Going on to the next quarterback I had in the poll. Great, great, great name for Elvis Grbac. If you don't remember Elvis Grbac, he was drafted out of Notre Dame. I'm sorry, Michigan. I take that back. And he filled in very well for Steve Young. In fact, there is that famous Sports Illustrated cover where actually it was I believe it was on the cover of the paper here. The Niners had defeated the Dallas Cowboys when Gerbach had filled in. It said Elvis lives on the front of it. And he went on to enjoy a really good run with the 49ers, as you could see in 1995. He was 3-2 when he filled in for the injured Steve Young. Threw for over 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That continued into the next season as he was 3-1 as a backup. Did throw 10 picks, but that all catapulted him to become a starter for Kansas City that next season in 97, where he only played 10 games. Was 8-2, though, as a starter, 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. And then, of course, came a downward slide in 98. 2-4, 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, but enjoyed a really good year in 99. And his best year, statistically, in 2000, where he had thrown for over 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and then he finished with Baltimore at only age 31. So I think, again, he goes into that. He was in that poll with Shaun Hill and Steve Bono and I just went blank. Go figure. Um, as one of the better backups that we've had. Um, at the Nick Mullens was the other gentleman. Steve Bono was the one that I was kind of surprised got the less amount of votes, and I'm wondering if it's a thing because some of you guys maybe just don't remember him. Um, Steve Bono was a hell of a good quarterback. Very cerebral. Um, it's funny when you look at his career because he never really got to be a legit quarterback, I think, until he got the time to play in 91 when he filled in for Montana and he filled in for the injured Steve Young. And he held his own really well. He was 5-1 as a starter, threw for over 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. It's funny. I was at the game. I want to say it was either 91 or 92. We opened the season with the New York Jets. Joe Montana was injured for the whole season. He had that elbow injury that he suffered against the New York Giants in the NFC Championship playoff game, in which that hit from Leonard Marshall really did him in. He was still recovering from that elbow surgery. I was at opening day, 49ers Giants, either 91 or 30. 91 or 92, and Steve Young went down early on. Bono came in and filled in admirably. Niners pulled out that win. From there, Bono always really was a really solid backup. I think he was kind of on par with Frank Reich in Buffalo, where he really had the ability to come into a game and really either keep things close, not get blown out, or do really well. And as you can see, he went on later on in his career to be a starter at age 33 in Kansas City. That first season, he was 13-3, threw for over 3,000 yards, had 21 touchdowns, 10 picks. And then that next season, still an 8-5 record, but he did throw 13 interceptions. And then he kind of traveled around a little bit to Green Bay, St. Louis, and Carolina. But he enjoyed a lengthy career as legitimately as a backup. Had a 28-14 record, which really speaks for itself, I think. So out of those four guys that I had up in the poll, Bono, um, you know, um, Bono, as well as with Nick Mullens, Shaun, I almost said Shaun King. Go figure. And Elvis Grbac. I think it's safe to say, in my opinion, I was surprised Bono didn't receive more of the votes because I thought Bono was the best of the three quarterbacks on a cerebral level. And then I would have to say, I think they were all very similar. Obviously they enjoyed different. They had different stats, but then again, it had a lot to do with the time in which they played. Shaun Hill was also a cerebral guy, I think, on par with not maybe as durable as Steve Bono, but I really liked what I saw from him in his limited time. I was surprised to see that Bono had the less amount of votes and that Nick Mullens had the most, which was very interesting. And I think Nick Mullens, again, had a lot of talent and is a very likable guy. I'm hoping that he can continue on his career. I know he was in Philadelphia, and now I think he's in Cleveland. Obviously, he's not going to get the most playing time with Deshaun Watson. We don't know what's if that all turns out, but you can't help but not like Nick Mullens. I felt the same way about C.J. Beathard. I liked C.J. Beathard a lot. I think that if we would have gotten to see a little more of him, maybe things could have been better. Who knows? I don't know. Not a mind reader, but it's just the way things are. But it was interesting to read that poll. Another poll I had up was the combination of who was the greatest 49ers tight end. And I had compared three of the great 49er tight ends in Brent Jones, Vernon Davis, and obviously the great George Kittle. I was surprised again to see that Brent Jones got the least amount of votes. I think Brent Jones, he's by far one of my favorite players, so I'm biased. But you have to remember that he played at a time when the tight end was a tight end. It wasn't split out to be like a wide receiver. He wasn't built like a wide receiver. George Kittle and Vernon Davis are freaks of nature. They have this intense amount of speed, and they have wonderful ability to get open after the catch. Kittle doesn't look like a predominant, isn't built like he's built more like a wide receiver, but he sure shit plays like a tight end. So he would have been perfect in the time when a tight end was a tight end, because he could give a hit and he could take a hit, and he looks to knock you on your ass. Brent Jones was built more like a tight end, didn't have the speed of Kittle and Davis, but he had hands, man, and he can run routes. He was ultra deadly, and he was ultra important to the 49ers. And if you don't know, if you weren't around for Brent Jones, please go back and watch a lot of his stats, man. Okay, like I said, he was so important for them on their run. He was, as you can see, he was part of their Super Bowl teams for various years, and he enjoyed his best year statistically: 68 catches in '93, 735, 3 touchdowns. But as you can see, also then he had 9 touchdowns in '94. And you have to remember, perhaps he got lack of receptions because, think about it, the 49ers had Jerry Rice, John Taylor, they had Mike Sherrard, they had, in a couple of these years, then they went on to have Terrell Owens and J.J. Stokes and Ty Streets. So, and they were also throwing to a wide receiver, running backs out of the backfield, whether it was Roger Craig, Ricky Waters. So, imagine, if you will, if Brent Jones was the stud receiving guy on a team. And as you can see, in '95, he had 101 targets. He still was a very important part of the offense going forward in his career, but he also got at a great time. And I think, again, you have to really go back and watch the videos to understand how important he was to them. I was, again, really shocked that he did not get the bulk of the votes, because to say George Kittle is the greatest tight end in 49 history, I definitely understand that. But at the same time, you know, I hate, and again, I'm not using this as the primary reason, but Brent Jones got chips. And again, I know it's a team effort, but that kind of is something else you have to factor into. Looking at Kittle's stats, I mean, like I said, Kittle's a phenom. 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 2 back-to-back over 80 reception type seasons. Imagine if he wouldn't have gotten hurt in 2020. He's only 28 years old, and over 335 career receptions. 20 touchdowns. There's talk about him being right up there with Travis Kelce, and all the other great tight ends in the league, and it's well deserved and it's well understood. I love Kittle. Too bad there's not a stat for all the things that Kittle does, whether it's throwing blocks, whether it's being used out of the backfield. As you can see in the stats, whether it's just being an overall presence on the field that is so positive and so uplifting. You got to love this guy. I mean, he can be a face of any franchise. He's obviously one of the many faces of the 49ers franchise. But I think when his time ends and he retires, he possibly could go down as the greatest 49er tight end of all time. I mean, it's definitely arguable. Moving on from there, of course, is Vernon Davis. And, it's funny. Vernon Davis, I think, is a guy that kind of he gets a bad rap sometimes. Obviously, we all know about his early years when Mike Singletary had to discipline him, threw him off the field. In case you've never seen that, go back and watch it. I remember watching that live. It was kind of hysterical, kind of shocking, and just like, goddamn, Mike Singletary, he's even a badass as a head coach. I loved Coach Singletary. But Vernon was a great talent. If you look at his stats, 583 career catches, I mean, that's nothing to shy away from. One of those years, 78 catches, his most, 965, 13 touchdowns. That was a phenomenal year he had in 2009. He was a freak show. 128 targets. They used to split him out. He was not built like like a tight end. Made the Pro Bowl twice, the All-Pro second team once. Played on some bad 49er teams, but he also came up very big for us at times. I was really upset when they parted ways with him in 2014. I still think that he had game left. They sent him off to Denver, the trade, and then he went on with Washington. Had 2 solid years, over 40 catches, and then he retired. But had a nice career, man. 63 career touchdowns. Nothing terrible. and 13 touchdowns, two years, both as 49ers, and he was a big help. I just think talent-wise, Kittle and Brent Jones were above him. Toughness obviously goes to George Kittle. Hands I have to give to George Kittle and Brent Jones. I will say athleticism is a tie between Kittle and Vernon Davis. Brent Jones was not as athletic as the both of them. But I think I think Davis enjoyed a pretty good career. You don't really look at career receptions by a tight end. He's got over 500, man. In the playoffs, as you can see, he only made the playoffs 3 times in his time as a 49er. They were 3 back-to-back seasons, obviously, and he came up big, especially in 2011, man. 10 catches, 292, and 4 touchdowns. That was that nice run we had, man. I don't know. I think what somebody had put it on the post I had about Vernon Davis when he received this one of those. He received a crazy hit. I forgot who it was on the Seahawks that hit him, but he wanted no part of it. It definitely changed his game. He definitely wasn't the most physical of wide receivers. Whereas George Kittle loves to get mixed up in it and just knock you on your ass. That was not Vernon Davis at all. I think some people kind of felt he was made of glass, but you can't shy away from his numbers. One of the other posts I had, I'm trying to pull it up. I can't seem to find it right now, but one of the other posts, which was another one of the polls, was how people felt about the Trey Lance move, and if you agreed or disagreed that we had given up too much to get him. The majority of the polls said that we didn't, which I'm shaking my head at. I don't understand how you can't think that we didn't give up too much to get Trey Lance. It's not a diss at Trey Lance. It's not a personal thing. I don't know any other quarterback that, unless you're Robert Griffith, that was giving up so much to get you. I was surprised to see that people didn't agree with me. But hey, man, that's why I love doing this, is because of the different forms of opinion. Have conversation. If you guys, I love to hear why you think that we didn't give up. You don't think we gave up too much to get Trey Lance. I love to hear why. The other poll was, I believe it had to do with, could we have still gotten Trey Lance had we not traded up? And the majority was yes. And that's interesting. I think that's that's something everybody's on board with, that. Yeah, we could have gotten him at the same spot had we not traded those first 2-round draft picks. I think that's kind of common sense. And I do not think any other team was going to grab him. I think that the Chicago Bears were going to do what they did. I think every team did exactly what they were going to, except for us. And again, it's not a diss at Trey Lance. Somebody had posted how George Kittle had said that Trey Lance reminds him of Josh Allen. Now, again, I've heard 2 different types of arguments. I've heard Josh Allen and I've heard Patrick Mahomes, which are 2 players whose shoes to fill are very, very hard. I hope he's as good as I'll take either one. I'll take Trey Lance like a Josh Allen. I sure shit will take Trey Lance as a Patrick Mahomes. We have to see. But I think, though, that's a very interesting comparison to make, because, again, I think that, again, he would know more. George Kittle obviously spending time with him, but we have to see. We have yet to see. We'll see. We'll see. Looking on at tomorrow night's draft picks, here's where we're at. 2nd round, 3 in the 3rd, 1 in the 4th, 1 in the 5th, 3 in the 6th, 1 in the 7th. I don't know. I like that we have a good variety of picks. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Not bad. Not bad. I'll tell you this, I'd rather have 2 less picks and 1 in the 1st round. That's just me. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to draft some real talented players in the second, third, and fourth, and fifth, and sixth, and seventh round. We got to take that into consideration. For the most part, the 49ers have done a really decent job of drafting in the last couple of years, I felt, at least, for the most part. Yes, you're always going to have the players that aren't established. You're always going to have the players that don't work out, like Joe Williams. You're always going to have the situations that don't work out, like Reuben Foster with the injuries. It's just you're going to have busts like Kwame Harris. It's what happens. It's the gamble. Like I said earlier, no one knows jack shit. You hope the scouts do their job. The management does their job. And then sometimes management fucks up. I mean, look, to be practical and to be truthful and objective, John Lynch could have fucked up with the Trey Lance move. Time will only tell. I think he fucked up in that he gave away too much equity. That's just common sense. But you never know. Trey Lance could turn out to be a stud. We all hope so. But this is what we're looking at for tomorrow night. And again, hopefully by the time we pick at 61 in the second round, I'm sure there'll be a lot of talent left. I hope some of that talent is left over from the first round because let's face it, there are some good lookers in there. Wide receiver wise, man, I don't want to get on the whole Deebo Samuel thing. I've done enough episodes about that, but there's some talent there, but I doubt we're going to be looking there. There's a lot of news that the Jets are putting together a trade package. I don't see it happening. I don't see it coming. I think the Jets are going to use those 2 first-round draft picks to continue to build their team defensively, whether it's Sauce Gardner at the corner, a defensive end, an edge rusher, or another wide receiver to join what they already have to help their young quarterback, Zach Wilson. But I can't see anybody making a trade with us, and I sure shit don't think the 49ers, despite all things, are going to trade away Deebo Samuel. There's been so many videos that have been going up. That one in the club is the funniest. If you couldn't figure out that was part of the narrative, now the narrative is that Deebo wants out. So all these kind of, bullshit reporters putting together these little snippets of Deebo saying this, saying that, taken out of context. That video, him, kind of doing the whole whoever that was not what was happening in the club. That's not what was happening at all. I don't believe any of it. And I don't think he's going anywhere. He'll end up signing with us no matter what. But this is what we're looking at, people. And I think that it's safe to say we can stockpile a couple of good players here. I hope some way, shape, or form we're able to, I don't know, maybe trade one of these third rounders for 2 more picks, maybe earlier in the third round, maybe another second round. We're able to move up and get some more draft picks, but it'll be interesting to see. But it really sucks that we don't have a first round draft pick. We could. You can always use a first round draft pick, I think. But like we've seen in so many other drafts, all the mega talent that comes out late, so we have to hope for the best. That's all we can do. So that's about it for now. If you see the polls on the Instagram page, that's my phone ringing. Just feel free to vote if you haven't voted. What I usually do is put the results back a couple hours later before the 24-hour period goes away. And jump on that poll if you can. There'll be more polls coming that I put together. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you got comments. I always love comments. You want to have conversation about about this team and what we're talking about in these podcasts, always hit me. Always open to hearing different opinions on this team. So thank you. As always, this is the Niner Nut, and I am out.